Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Live Your Mission Show, brought to you by Mission Meets, where our guests share their most actionable advice so that you can live a more mission-centered life. I'm your host, Peter Alwood, and today we're releasing our first compilation episode. This is going to share some highlights from our first 5 episodes, which were with my co-founder, Nick McCann, the author of the book Unstoppable, David Hauser, Keto and Carnivore Diet, icon Craig Emmerich, author of the cookbook Balanced by Laura Lee Bryant, and founder and marketing guru, I called you guru, bro, Noah Kagan. Before I get to that, here's what's going on over at Mission Meets headquarters. All right, guys, I am excited to announce that we just launched the Mission Meets Perks program. You can find that at missionmeets.co. Click on Perks in the top navigation, and you can learn all about it. But essentially, for signing up, you get a bonus set of points, and you get a point assigned to every dollar that you spend with us, and you can redeem those for free stuff or discount on stuff that you're ordering already. You also have a referral link there that'll be just yours, and you can refer customers or friends to us, new customers to us, and you will get $10 of credit towards your account, and they get $10 just for ordering through your link. So it's good for everyone. Something we should have done a long time ago, but we're doing it now. So check that out, missionmeets.co, and click on the perks link. All right, now back to the show. All right, I'm excited about this because you get to hear from these 5 guests on how they define their mission, breakthroughs and lessons along the way, and some of their answers from the Reap Around, like their favorite book, best under $100 purchase, and what they've changed their mind about. Now, there won't be answers from every guest for every section. We try to keep it shorter and snappy that way. And this is meant to be super actionable for you, so it jumps around from guest to guest on each section. So if you haven't been able to listen to one or all of these, first of all, shame on you. Oh, what have you been doing? Just kidding. And this is your Cliff's Notes version for those guests. We're taking 5+ hours of interview content and boiling it down to just under an hour. So I hope you enjoy our first compilation episode from those first 5 guests, and we'll be doing more of that coming up. All right, well, let's get to it. Someone asks you what you do, what do you say?
I think about it a little bit, and then I tell them I sell meat.
Sell meat.
They always kind of give me a funny look, but yeah, I say I sell meat.
You sell meat, right?
Yep.
Right. So, yeah, and it's kind of a funny one because there are no clean meat related jokes, right? So like no matter how you say it, it just sounds awkward, and then you're like, well, I sell healthy snacks. I have a snack food brand, and so. The question that that always is going to follow this is like, why are you working on this, man? Like, why do you care? Why do you co-own a meat related snack brand? Like, why?
I love meat. I studied meat science. I work in I've always loved agribusiness. Agriculture has always been my dream job, dream industry, and always I've been involved in the meat industry for a pretty long time now, and this is what I do.
Yeah.
I dream about meat at night.
You do.
Yeah. All I do is think about meat and how to deliver more meat and process more meat and make better meat. So
yeah, I can vouch for that, man. All those weird texts I get from you middle of the night. What have we done that's been special?
Well, I think probably for me, and I think this is something that's valuable just in general, is we made the company about a mission, surrounded by, we made the core part of the company a mission, which is really giving back, profits from the company, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not just about selling meat, although that's important. Mm-hmm. It's about giving back. It's about donating to organizations that are doing good in the world. I think the other thing that we do is we source better raw material. We use non-GMO raw material. We don't put a bunch of garbage in the product. We're not always using fillers and extenders in order to make the product heavier so that we can sell you less product for the same amount of money, or less product for more money. Yeah. I think that's important. I mean, you take sugar out of the equation. I mean, a lot of our products don't have any sugar, and that hurts yields a lot, and it costs more to put out a product like that. But people don't want sugar anymore. I mean, people don't want garbage in their product. They don't want, soy protein or, mechanically separated chicken. Mm-hmm. It would be cheaper to get that stuff, but we don't have that in there. So I think, from my perspective, those are two real key parts of what we do as a business that makes us different and sets us apart.
Yeah.
My core purpose is empowering others to succeed. And that was our core purpose at Grasshopper. So now I've really translated that, because people kept asking me and saying, David, how did you lose weight? How did you do this? And I kept coming back to the idea that it didn't really matter how I did it. Other than the framework I used. Like, I specifically chose a diet that worked for me, right? But it could work for anyone, but each person has to find their own diet. And the framework that I built really allows for that. And it's quite a simple framework. I just stole it from, a continuous improvement or A/B testing framework, and it just works. I can remember all the way back to high school feeling overweight, and I played football and I lifted weights. So that was kind of my way of hiding that, right? And then the clothes that I wore and decisions that I made, right? But I always felt that way. I then went to college and I gained weight because there was food always available, right? Mm-hmm. And at some point after that, I decided I wanted to lose weight, and I had tried all sorts of things, right? Because identifying with being overweight and making the decision to try to lose weight, I had tried all sorts of diets with varying success, but none of them lasting, right? Which just builds on this frustration that started to build over the years, right? And then always feeling hungry was another difficult one, because the popular media and the mainstream says, you should snack. And I'm like, perfect. I'm always hungry. I'm going to snack. That didn't work for me because I overly snacked. I just ate all the time, right? And even when I tried to kind of use quote unquote self-control, it just built more frustration, because I'm like, I'm just really hungry now because my body was on a bad cycle of eating the wrong things, which I now know, right? So I think that all came to a boiling point after trying all sorts of things, including doing Ironman, triathlons, and marathons. So 30 plus hours a week of exercise, or getting to a race and putting on the spandex, shorts, and thinking, why do I have fat hanging over this? Like, I'm literally killing myself riding 7 or 8 hour bike rides, mm-hmm. and something's not working, right? And that was kind of the point. I said, there's a big problem here.
So when someone asks you what you do, what do you say? What's your current mission?
We have dedicated so much of our time over the past 15, 20 years to helping people. And it's all about health. A lot of people think about keto or carnivore as, a weight loss thing, or, quick fix to lose some weight. What we found over the last 15 plus years of helping people with this lifestyle and in our own lives is that it's more about health than it is about weight loss. And weight loss is just kind of a side bonus to how good they feel. And so, we've kind of dedicated our mission as spreading this is, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle that can not only help you lose weight, but make you feel better, get off your medications, reverse symptoms from all kinds of autoimmune disorders and other issues. And we're just all about spreading the word of that health message. If you think of a diet is something you do for a short period of time to lose some weight, and then you go back to the way you were. And for us, it's as much about healing as anything. And if somebody has terrible autoimmune condition, whether it's digestive issues, Crohn's, colitis, or skin issues, eczema, these type of issues that can really be, it's really rough when you're dealing with those chronic kind of conditions, especially like pain, like fibromyalgia or Lyme disease, which I have. And when you do this and you see how much better you feel, you don't want to go back. You don't want to go back to the way you used to feel with the pain, with the inflammation, with the skin issues. And so to look at it as a lifestyle is much better to set your mindset that I'm not just going to do this for a while and I can go back to eating donuts. I'm going to do this as it's something that's going to be better for my health in the short term and for the long term. And so looking at it as a lifestyle, I think makes it easier to have that vision.
When someone asks you what you do, what do you say?
I'm not sure is usually what I say.
Okay.
So I am a certified holistic chef, which is a really, really strange designation, but basically it means that I cook food that's healthy, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why are you working on this? Like, why is this your mission? Why are you the right person for the job? Maybe you can share that a little bit.
Yeah, that works. So I, about 8 years ago now, was living in New York City. I'd been there for a few years and I was having a really rough time. I had been kind of floating from one paralegal job to the next and hated it, felt totally misaligned, and was incredibly anxious. I've always been an anxiety driven person, but it reached a real maximum when I was living in the city. I mean, I was spending thousands of dollars going to the ER thinking I was having a heart attack. I became very antisocial. I was having heart palpitations, all this crazy stuff. And at the time, I started cooking really honestly because I just couldn't afford to keep eating out all the time. So I stopped going out to eat, which meant I stopped drinking as much and I had a lot more time on my hands. So I started going down to the Union Square Farmers Market and buying ingredients. And then I'd go to bookstores and, take pictures of recipes, and I started cooking. And about 6 months to a year into starting to cook for myself, for really the first time in my life, my anxiety symptoms decreased dramatically. It was wild. And at the time, I didn't really see a lot about mental health and food, a lot about that correlation. And to me, that was the coolest thing I'd ever experienced, that what I was eating could not just impact my, aesthetics, which we all know, but could impact my mental health. And I knew, when I started to piece it together, I knew that was what I wanted to do in some capacity for a living.
First question is, when someone asks you what you do, what do you say? What's your current mission?
I don't say mission. I generally try to say something funny. When people ask, literally what I've said for the past 2 years, I say I play on computers.
You play on computers.
I play on computer. I'm playing. I used to say retired, like for a really long time. And then before, just if I really didn't want to be somewhere, I'd say I worked at Office Max. Because I did work at Office Max for 2 years. But I don't say that as much. Now I say play on computers because I can't believe, a lot of times, man, I cannot believe I get paid to do what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. And you forget that, right? You forget that you're not sitting in a cube or whatever it is that, normal people do. And you're stepping in when you want and stepping out when you want.
Well,
and you're pulling late
in,
nights, right?
You got to lean in. You read the Sheryl Sandberg. You got to seriously leaning in. I think one phrase that I've been thinking about lately, and then one thought that I had based on what you were saying is like, are you trying to get a job or are you trying to do a career? Mm-hmm. And I think there's just something I've been noodling on a bit because like, if you're doing work, right? If you're, think about it like an Uber driver. There is someone who's got a job, right? And they drive and their car smells dirty and whatever, versus someone who's like a professional, like a career, like they got mints, right? They got those mints that are nice, right? And the seats are clean and they maybe talk to you. Would you like to speak, sir or madame? And that's a career. And I think it's like finding careers that we enjoy. The other thing you kind of got me noodling on is like, for everyone listening, what's the intro that you want? Right? Like you said, Noah had an intro. I didn't even know how you introed me, but what kind of intro do I want, and work backwards from that intro? I think a lot of times I was talking with someone today, they're just kind of going about it. And they're like, you really focus a lot on working backwards. And I was like, I don't know. That's how you figure it. That's how you get what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you call that reverse engineering your life? What would you call that?
Yeah. Goal planning. Mm-hmm. And I think that's honestly, I've found for myself that it's more hard to figure out what I want than to get it. I think once we're very clear on what we want and we actually want it, then getting it and dealing with adversity and dealing with the good times makes it much, much easier.
Why does that work though?
Well, I think most people they're not clear on what they want, and then they don't plan on how to get it. But if you kind of like, for example, I'll give you candid. So with my personal like podcast, like Noah Kagan Presents, I started thinking for 2020, I want to reach 1 million people, Peter. I want 1 million people. And then I really sat with it, and I went for a walk, and I'm thinking about it and journaling, and I actually don't care at all for that. Okay. I literally don't care. Mm-hmm. I don't care. It really could not make a difference, and it doesn't motivate me. And so I still have not figured out the clarity around that, but I just was reflecting on, okay, well, what things am I doing or have been doing that I love doing and I'll keep doing? And so how do I tie a more mission or goal around that?
Of all the things you had to get better at in order to become a quote unquote expert in your field, what was the hardest?
Ooh, all the things I had to get better at. boy, there's a lot of, I think that I probably had to get better at listening more instead of jumping to conclusions and jumping to the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think I used to talk at people a lot, and maybe I still do. You can you can decide whether that's true or not. I used to talk at people a lot more, and it's okay to try to get your point across, but I think sometimes I didn't start out by asking the question. I'm a big St. Francis of Assisi fan, and he said something, and I'm paraphrasing because I'm not as eloquent as he was, but something to the tune of first seek to understand, then seek to be understood. A lot of times I started out trying to be understood as opposed to like, okay, what are people saying? Where are they coming from? What's the actual problem? And instead of taking a step back, I would jump into quote unquote a solution.
Yeah.
And I've been married for a while, and of course that doesn't always doesn't always work, but it doesn't work in your work life either, right? And sometimes you maybe are not really solving the right problem. You're solving what your idea of what the problem is, and there's about 3 or 4 other people who have a different idea, and those ideas might be better. So sometimes it's important to listen. If you don't do that, then you can run into problems. And I didn't do that very well for maybe a long time, and probably still have a little more to go, a little further to go on that one too. So.
Yeah, we all do. For you, and going through the process, and I'd love to hear kind of about what worked and what didn't. What were some of the surprises? What were some of the things that you found that were hindering you that weren't expected?
Yeah, I think the 2 biggest things are, one, a lot of the things that I thought were going to be very complex and difficult actually were easier, right?
Okay.
So now, not easy to do, but very simple in theory, right? So like, we'll take sleep, for example. I did all sorts of crazy testing, right? I had the things on the face. I did the in-lab, the at-home testing. I did everything, right? Expensive tools, testing, all that, right? Really what it comes down to is going to bed around 9:30 at night, waking up naturally without an alarm clock, roughly when the sun rises, and not eating within 3 hours of bed, right? Now we can start to dig into like some of the little details, like maybe magnesium supplementation at night makes marginal increases. Maybe a cooling pad or mattress makes marginal increases. And I'm actually really liking the one that I'm using right now. But again, the biggest changes were the most simple, very difficult to do, right? Like if you see yourself as a nighttime person and you're going to bed at midnight, me saying go to bed at 9:30 is pretty extreme, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think throughout I discovered that it's just the simplest stuff.
Knowing what you know now, I mean, and you've been doing this for a long time, so it might be hard to think back. When you first started experimenting, what would you have done differently? Now knowing and having all the knowledge that you've got.
I'd probably just dive straight in. When I started out, I would eat whatever my wife made me during the week, and then on the weekends kind of do my own thing and have my beer and all that. And then after the more and more I ate during the week, the way keto, the more and more the weekends made me feel terrible. And I finally made the connection after some time that, it's because of what I'm eating and what I'm putting in my mouth on the weekends that makes me feel like crap on Sunday and Monday. Right. So it's not worth it. So if I did it over, I would dive straight in and just not even do any cheats or, weekend kind of thing and go straight to keto.
What would you have done differently?
With my business or with my health?
I think maybe both.
So let's see. Health-wise, I would say I would just have been less strict with myself, been a little bit more forgiving with myself. I definitely went through a period where I was very what is now termed orthorexic, where I wanted everything to be what in my mind fell into the category of healthy. But with every passing day, I am truly believing that our mindset and our perspective around food and everything in our life actually probably trumps the content that we're putting in our body. Now, obviously, there's a threshold past which, like, that's not going to be true if you're eating Snickers all the time, but you have a really positive mindset. But I think it needs to come first. And so for me, I wish I'd had a different mindset and a more chill, easygoing perspective about food and my relationship with my body. And a lot of that, on and off the wagon mentality that a lot of women and people in general suffer with, and the shame spiral and all of that. So it's really, that's what I would say I would change in terms of my health, is my mindset. And then for business, I think the biggest thing, I thought about this. I haven't really had some obviously major blunders, but the two things that I have struggled with is, one, undervaluing my services, and two, creating boundaries and saying no. And I know I'm not alone in those things, but those are ongoing issues. I think a lot of us have imposter syndrome. I do for sure. So I've had a tendency to undervalue my services, and it doesn't help anyone, because one, you don't get the demographic that you really want. Two, people aren't as invested in it when they don't pay what it's really worth. And three, then I'm resentful. So it's really, and you don't want to get yourself in a cycle where, especially a city like Nashville, that's still really a small town in some ways. If I charge X amount for a cooking class, people are going to know. I can't really bump up my prices without hearing from people about it, because they know what it was before. And then saying no, we just have to create those boundaries, and we have to get comfortable being comfortable saying no. It's really hard to do, but it is so incredibly valuable, because the mental, physical, and emotional space that you're going to create for yourself when you do that is going to end up benefiting the people whose lives you're trying to add value to anyway.
Is there anything else that you feel like you would have done differently, that would just help have progressed things, right, but not have changed your trajectory?
In what sense?
So you did this 2-year walkabout that we talked about earlier. How much of it do you think was necessary in order for you to get to where you are now mentally, and then also in your business, versus what could you have short-circuited? What do you think you didn't have to go through?
No, I think I probably wasted 2 years. I'm sure I gained and I learned, and I worked hard a little bit, and then I struggled, but I think it was unnecessary.
Okay.
I think the question for me is what could I have done is there a way to make sure that if that happens again, I can learn it quicker? I think the key thing is being aligned with my business partner. I think one of the things I observed is that when you're working on something that gives you fulfillment, and I was doing the podcast, and I was doing YouTube, and I was kind of building some little side things here and there. And I never felt great. I never woke up looking forward to working on it. I never was like, oh, how is it doing today? Hey, how can I tell more people to do it? I was like, all right, I'm going to go podcast this one person because they're famous, and hopefully other people will listen. And that's not to say I didn't have days I enjoyed or days that strong, but I think with where I've come back to now, I'm very motivated because I'm just doing the things I want. I'm working on AppSumo, and I'm working on SendFox, and we're launching a new product, and we're moving the team around and simplifying the business to be more effective. And I'm wow, yeah, this stuff I really love. And I love the people I get to do it with. And I love the customers we get to help. Versus, let's even say 5 years ago, or was it 10 years, over 10 years ago, I was doing Facebook games where I hated my partners, I hated the customers, and I hated the work I did every day. But it's not about boohoo me. It was all right, let's try to keep learning so the mistakes happen quicker and quicker.
All right, man. We're going to switch gears to what we're calling the Reaper round.
In case anybody wasn't convinced that I'm eating this, I am.
Favorite book? Could be something you read in the last year, a classic, or business, personal, whatever.
Eat it right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
The Dispossessed by Ursula Le Guin. My favorite book.
What does that even mean? What is that?
The Dispossessed. It's a book. It's a science fiction book by Ursula Le Guin.
Never heard of it.
Stop making me. That's where the play.
So hot. All right. Favorite book. And it could be something you read in the last year, or something that you feel like is a classic for you. Could be life, business, however you want. But what's
favorite book? All right, this is a difficult one. So I'd say *Sapiens* is one of my favorite books, by Yuval Harari. He's written a number of books. I think *Sapiens* is by far his best. That was his first book. I think for me, it just really opened up my mind and said, think about our evolution a little bit differently than I might have in the past, right? And, you know, it helped me in a number of areas. Now, I think a close second to that is The Evolution of Everything by Matt Ridley, or Enlightenment Now by Steve Pinkerton, or Pinker. And, you know, both of those are very much about the positivity of our current space and our current world, because although we hear about all the negatives, what's really happening is, like, we're in one of the best times ever in terms of human evolution and the evolution of everything around us, from computers and money and time and all the things around us. But we just hear about the negatives. So those books were both really nice reminders of, like, we live in an amazing time. Like, if you look back 50,000 years ago, like, the likelihood of dying at birth was pretty high. Like, that sucks. Like, in general, right? Or the likelihood of dying in a tribal fight was relatively high. Like, those things have gone away. But what we hear about terrorism, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not discounting that. Like, it's bad. I get it, right? But in the grand scheme of things, as we've evolved, we are in the best place possible today.
Totally. And we take it for granted, right?
Oh my God, it even smells too spicy.
Do you like spicy things?
No. I mean, I like not mild spice, but, like, you know, reasonable spice.
Yeah. All right. So, favorite book?
Actually, there's a book on Lyme disease called Toxic, that anybody who has Lyme or thinks they may have Lyme, Toxic is, like, awesome. That's a great place to start.
Okay, Toxic.
By Neil Nathan.
Okay. It's hot.
So 2 books I've really been loving. One is Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed.
Okay.
And the second is When Breath Becomes Air by Atul Gawande.
Okay. What's the second one about?
So it's basically written by a man who is in the process of dying. And I believe he is a doctor, or I'm confusing that with, I don't know, but basically it's from the perspective of somebody who has a terminal illness. And it is beautifully written. And I think because the reader knows that from the beginning, you're just so, you're so present with it, and everything has a poignancy to it that it just wouldn't have otherwise, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thoughtful. I like it.
It's amazing.
Awesome. Favorite book? Could be something from business, personal, last 5 years, of all time. What comes to mind?
To Kill a Mockingbird was, like, my favorite growing up. I'd say, honestly, the most unique book I've read that I loved in the past year was called The Secret Race.
Never heard of it. It's about.
I know. It's one of these books that no one's heard of. It's not like one of the common business books. It's a guy who was Lance Armstrong's teammate. And it's like, I think what I found fascinating was, like, I think we think these people doped and they just got fast. But it was amazing to see the amount of work that they had to put in to be an elite cyclist. So really amazing book. Secret Race by Tyler Hamilton.
Okay.
It's actually, this is not as hot as I thought. I thought I was going to be crying.
Yeah, just keep eating it, bro. It's good.
Oh, yeah.
It's so good. It's got
Peter.
good flavor too, right? It's not like just like stupid spicy. It's got nice taste to it.
Honestly, I'm enjoying it.
Good.
I think that, I'll go read The Secret Race, man. That was fire.
Secret Race. Okay. Very good, man. Any quotes you live by?
Quotes.
Yeah.
My dad always used to say, it's not the size of the dog. It's the size of the fight in the dog, not the size of the dog. Is that right? Did I mess that up? I think that's right. I'm reading this hot stuff, so.
It's not the size of the dog. It's not the size of the dog. It's the size of the fight in the dog.
Size of the fight in the dog. That's right.
I like that.
I also like the St. Francis quote, first seek to understand, then to be understood, which I try to live by, but fail consistently at.
You just got to get up and try, man.
Keep trying.
Any quotes you live by?
So this is a difficult one. Like, there's a lot of quotes that I like, but I really try to live my life by my family core values. And last year we started to develop those, and we're still halfway through that process. So one of those is experiences over things. Another one is life begins at the edge, right? So, like, those are the things that I live by. So they're not necessarily quotes as much as what we've distilled down as our family core values and how we want to live our lives, and how we want our kids to live their lives.
You put this together with your kids?
Yeah, so our kids are a little bit. I have a 2-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 15-year-old. So we've started to integrate them into that. Not maybe not in the process, right? Because it's a little bit too complex in some of those areas for the 2-year-old.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, like we want to model those behaviors, and those are the things that we live, right? So I'm pretty frugal in where we spend, but if it's about an experience, like we just spent 2 weeks in Greece on half the time on a boat. Like I'm happy to spend money on those types of experiences. Like those are, mind expanding and, once in a lifetime, and we will remember them, and we got pure enjoyment out of them. We can talk about them and enjoy them compared to going and buying something down the road. Like I would prefer to spend zero on that.
Yeah, I'm with you too. Any quotes you live your life
by? Probably the education piece. Always keep learning. Always keep educating yourself. If you ever think you know everything about a topic, you don't. There's always somebody who knows more or can share a piece of information that helps you.
Okay. That's spicy.
Yeah. I don't think I can handle anymore.
Any quotes you live by?
Yes. So the first one is do it anyway.
Okay.
And the second one is the question, which I've talked about, which is how can I, in any situation, if I'm not sure what to do, just ask myself, how can I add value to this? Or how can I make this better?
Okay. And what does the do it anyway mean to you?
To me, the do it anyway comes into play when it's something, it really just comes into play when I'm afraid of something. When it's a fear-based decision, now you need to kind of like get your gut involved, because you do want to have that instinct that it's the right move. But once you have that sense of, I really do want to do it, do it anyway, even if you're afraid.
Okay. It's just kind of getting over the fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing is something you probably need to do, but at the same time, you've got some fear to get over.
Exactly.
I totally get that. Any quotes you live by?
Any what?
Quotes.
Quotes I live by. The one I've always thought, the one that always comes to mind, the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Okay.
It's a mom one.
Yeah.
Pain is such a rush. That's from a Bachelor Party, a Tom Hanks 1980s movie.
I did not remember that quote.
Whenever you get hurt. So this guy kept trying to kill himself. I know we're in rapid fire, but keeps trying to kill himself, and every time he kills himself, he fails, and he goes, "Pain is such a rush."
You live by that quote?
I think about that a lot when I get into pain.
Okay.
I think sometimes lately with bicycling, it's good to have some suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't have really a quote about it, but when I'm like this morning, I was suffering a lot during biking because I was racing a buddy in our virtual world. It's kind of weird. I guess in my mind, I'm like, you can suffer. Like you can suffer longer than others.
Mm-hmm.
And I just tell myself that. I don't know if it always works, but it feels like it helps.
Best under $100 purchase.
Oh, so ever this year, like,
this year's totally fine. Yeah.
Okay. So I would say my Squatty Potty.
Okay.
It's like $15. Love it. Huge benefit. That wasn't this year, so that's probably one of the top ones.
Okay.
Cheating a little bit, the steam oven would be my number 2. I think it was like $180.
What's a steam oven?
Oh my God. So this changed my eating totally. So instead of a microwave, I put my prepared meals. So we prepare lunches ahead of time as a household, and some dinners because family obligations and whatever. I don't eat breakfast. And instead of putting it in the microwave, I now put it in this little steam oven. It looks like a little toaster oven. You can get super expensive ones that are like built in the house.
Mm-hmm.
This is a countertop one. And it changed 2 things. One, it slowed down eating because instead of throwing something in the microwave, you now have to wait 15 to 20 minutes for it to heat up naturally nicely. So instead of 2 minutes, it's 15, 20 minutes. So it kind of slowed down. I had to be intentional and make a decision about eating, which really helped me because I'll just eat really quick, right, in my natural way. Also, getting rid of the microwave is just good because it kind of kills everything in the food.
Yeah.
But then food that I would never typically prepare for later consumption, like salmon and other things like that, heated up in the steam oven is better than when you cooked it the first time. Like,
no way.
I love it. So that changed because now I opened up my food options. Like a lot of days of the week, I'll have a piece of salmon and cauliflower rice and things like that I normally wouldn't have for lunch because it wouldn't be something I would reheat.
Best under $100 purchase that has impacted your life recently.
Yeah, so going back to my sleep issues, I bought a blackout mask from Amazon. It's like cotton mask.
Okay.
It has become like my lovey. I'm obsessed with it. I look for it immediately. I love to hold on to it. But it really is incredible for travel or just different times of the year or whatever. It really does just like completely block things out, and it just helps me sleep so much better. And really at the end of the day, there's not much more important. So
Sure. You feel like you fall asleep faster with it?
fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, get back to sleep easier in the middle of the night.
Okay. All right, cool. I need that. In the
Yeah, I'll
last,
send you the link, the specific link.
okay, awesome. Thank you. In the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life? And I can even twist that a little bit and say, what did you used to, believe was wrong, and now you've changed your mind about?
Yeah, I think the biggest change in my mind is really questioning conventional wisdom across the board, right? And saying like, maybe this doesn't work for me. That was the biggest change that had the most impact. And like, let's talk about like real examples, right? Across the board. So diet is this very easy one to talk about, but conventional wisdom about doctors and like what types of doctors work. So I've shifted to a functional doctor, questioning like things like, as I've changed my diet and cholesterol goes up, am I okay with that? I am okay with that because I've started to dig in and say conventional wisdom doesn't make a lot of sense here. And the data is actually the opposite, that, healthy cholesterol is far more protective than it is damaging. So if I hadn't opened my mind up to that, I would have been far more scared to try a ketogenic diet or to do these other things that are, quote unquote extreme, if it bucks kind of conventional wisdom. So I'm super like, that has been the biggest impact.
What have you changed your mind about? What did you believe to be false before, and now you believe to be true?
Just about animal protein in general.
Okay.
I looked at it as literally when I started writing our book Keto, I wrote half of it with my wife, and I wrote a whole chapter on the nutrients in beef because I was probably started writing that book, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, and I'd been in this space for a while, thought I knew something about nutrition and what's in our food. And yet nobody talks about, that steak is loaded with nutrients. You don't see the message on TV. You don't see that anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I started researching it and running the numbers. And I'm like, what the heck? Why did I not know this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just the most nutrient dense food on the planet pretty much is beef liver. Like, you can't put something in your mouth that has more vitamins and minerals than beef liver. And beef by itself beats almost anything. So, that knowledge of looking at animal proteins as your source of nutrients was a huge change for me. And I think in general, people just don't see that. But I think, and there's many other aspects of animal proteins that we could go into, like the environment and some of these things that are commonly thought today as problems,
mm-hmm.
which really aren't. And, one of the things I've really been on a agenda to promote is the fact that properly raised animals and specifically ruminants can actually help reverse climate change, not be of negative impact on it. And I've been trying to message that a lot because it's such a crazy thing to think about, that something like fossil fuels that are like 28% of our problem of emissions isn't being talked about more aggressively when we're talking so aggressively about cattle, which are like 2%.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, you got to think of what is the cattle. Cattle is a cycle, right? So think about the atmosphere. You have the methane emissions, but those cows are not alchemists, right? They didn't make carbon out of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Where did they get the carbon? They got it from the grass they ate.
Mm-hmm.
Where did the grass get it? From the air. So you're getting carbon out of the air, and it goes through the cow. Some of it comes back out, but then it goes back to the grass, and you got a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Fossil fuels, that are pulled out of the ground, that's carbon coming out of the ground that wasn't in the atmosphere. And it's going to go in and have a 1,000-year life of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that is adding and adding. And actually there's been an increase in methane over the past several years. There's a study that was just done that linked it to fracking, not cows. The type of methane that has increased is the type of methane that comes from fracking. So again, that's new methane coming in. That's not coming from carbon dioxide through grass, through a cow and out through a natural cycle. So I think we got to focus on what the science is telling us and what is the real problem and not these false problems.
Yeah, like something that's such a minuscule percentage of the overall problem, right?
Yeah, even and then on top of it, it's a cycle versus new coming out of the ground and pumped up. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, the difference between something that was like previously trapped, not going to be released potentially. I'm no scientist.
Exactly.
Exactly. Versus something that was just part of that cycle and the animal would be part of it. Yeah, I totally get that, man. What's your biggest business blunder and how did it set you up for success later?
Interesting story. I had this great idea that I was going to sell cottage cheese or something, and I learned early on, we always joke, Peter and I always joke that I like to lose money on every sale, but make it up in volume. And I actually set up a continuing line of business for some dairy products back in the day when I was doing some other stuff, where I kept thinking that if I could get to the right volumes, I can get a better price, and I'd finally make money. But I ended up losing money for a really long time. I even have buddies who are still that I still am in touch with, and they still joke about my cottage cheese markets, that I sold all this cottage cheese but never made a dime. It was amazing how much cottage cheese I sold, but we never made any money.
Well, and the thing is, like, to piggyback on that too, I think that the way we've applied it now is you can figure out that there's a market for the product.
It's so hot, Peter. It's so hot.
It's so hot. I think your glasses are fogging up.
I don't know if it's too hot. Oh my God.
Don't eat anymore.
I can't eat anymore.
You got ice in there. That's going to make it worse.
Oh. You better be able to take. If you can eat this, you better be able to take it. Because, tell you what, this stuff is no joke.
It's hot. It's so hot.
Oh my gosh.
It's hot.
Peter.
So while you're dying, I'm gonna keep talking.
You keep talking.
So the way that we've applied this is we'll figure out that there's a market for a product we can sell, and we'll figure out that we can actually make it. And we may not be able to make money in the beginning, but we need to know that if and when we get to a certain volume, that we can actually get better pricing and make the margin make sense. The mistakes we made early on was that we didn't take that last step. And so we would find that we're never going to get to a price that's going to make sense or a cost that's going to make sense. And there
always has to be a clear path to profitability.
There has to be a clear path.
Right. And if there's not, then it won't work.
It won't work.
Oh. Peter, I'm not even exaggerating right now. I want to swear right now, Peter.
It's hot. All right, folks, we had to actually cut out for a second as Nick was choking on this stuff. You're back now. You're back.
It's hot.
Stuff's
it's very hot.
Yeah. As I said on my recording of eating a whole bag, dude, that is hot. All right, biggest business blunder. Do you have one?
Yeah. So the biggest one by far in terms of size was at Grasshopper. We spent over $1 million trying to build businesses internally. For a lot of reasons that didn't work. We were focusing on the wrong markets, the wrong problems. We distracted ourselves from the core business and ultimately tried 6 businesses. One kind of was successful and now has become very successful. But that was kind of by mistake. It just was the right timing. It wasn't because we had the right process. It wasn't because we had the right people necessarily. Like there were a lot of mistakes. And so we spent $1 million doing that over a year period, a lot of money. And we lost far more than that in growth because we were not paying attention. We weren't focusing on what was important, which was the core business. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, we've had all sorts of other mistakes. Like I could go through lists of them, but that was the biggest.
Yeah. Do you feel like that set you up for some success later though? Like figuring that out in that year, having that painful year, but then
for sure
not to do that anymore.
That learning was very clear. Like I try to tell people this all the time. Like first, don't tell yourself a fake story in the business. Like we kept telling ourselves we had hit the most growth we could hit, right? Like we were so big and we just weren't. Like we weren't that big a company. When we sold, we were doing $30 million. Like that's great, but that's not that big. So we just built this myth up. Like every time we had a slowdown in growth, like, oh, we've hit the top of the market, right? And I think as entrepreneurs, you get bored after a while and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this new thing. I'm going to do this new thing, where I really wish that I had focused. So today I'm a big proponent on like focusing. Even if I have 5 businesses, within those businesses, I expect the team to be very focused. I'm not pulling their time all over the place. And, you know, then just outside of focus, really being very clear on not telling those fake stories, right? And creating myths. I think it goes back to this kind of travel idea, like breaking those myths and saying, you know what, this might not be true. Like, let's challenge this and say, how could we grow more, right? Like it's possible.
Last question. What's your favorite Mission Meats flavor?
I like the protein bars.
Okay.
My kind of go-to. I mean, literally, that is the protein. You know, you think people talk about protein bars.
Yeah.
This is a protein bar. Those aren't protein bars. Those are processed junk. This is a protein bar. I love that.
Yeah. That's why we made those, man. Because those
Exactly.
are, like you said, that is a literal protein bar. It is beef in a bar shape, right?
Yep. And back to the thing about nutrients. It's got all the nutrients in the beef, right? Where you get some processed, you know, plant protein, you know, isolate protein bar. It might have a multivitamin dumped in, but you know, getting it from Whole Foods is always better.
Yeah. And finally, your favorite Mission Meats flavor.
This one. No, actually, well, the jalapeno beef, because I do really like spicy food.
Okay.
But honestly, this may trump it. I mean, it is really, really spicy, guys. Like, be careful. Don't just go like shove this in your mouth. But the flavor is freaking delicious.
It is so good.
The spices are unbelievable. So yeah, I don't know. They might be neck and neck.
Okay. Awesome. Last question. What's your favorite Mission Meats flavor?
Dude, this Reaper. The Reaper. So I will tell you, the Reaper is solid. It's not, dude. I did a ghost pepper shot for a business thing we did for
a shot. Like
dude, it was not a good idea. I was like outside Walgreens it was at Walgreens. Yeah, outside Walgreens on the ground, and I'm like, I'm not joking. I'm like reaching up for people. I'm like, help me, and they're like, you look homeless. And I was like, can you please? I had like a $20 out. I'm like, can you buy me Pepto-Bismol? Because I was on my way to the gym and it really started kicking in. Oh, dude, it was brutal. And then like my poops hurt. Like if you know what I'm talking about, like the poops hurt. But so speaking of Mission Meat bars, so I would actually say the Carolina Reaper is like just on the edge of being too spicy, but just enough, which is great.
Good.
I will personally say, so I have the bars here.
Yeah. Nice.
I can hear them on the podcast world.
Yeah.
I am more of a fan of a turkey bar.
Okay.
It doesn't have the meat or the fattiness of a lot of like the pork or bacon that you guys do, or the meat bars, but definitely I'm more of a turkey. I think just like psychologically, I find it healthier.
Yeah. We have a turkey bar coming up.
Yeah. I think the turkey bars are good. No, you guys have turkey stick right here.
A turkey stick. Yeah. You said bar, and I was like, we are going to do a bar format turkey.
Oh, I was like, dude, I've been eating someone's turkey stick. That was in my mouth. I was like, I swear to God, you guys had them. I've been eating them.
We do have turkey sticks. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks so much for tuning in. It means so much to me and the entire Live Your Mission team. I hope you enjoyed our first compilation episode. If you have any feedback for us, please email us. Email me directly, peter@missionmeats.co. We're putting this content out so viewers and listeners like you will gain some benefit from it. And so if there's something else you'd like to hear about, someone you'd like to hear from, hit me up. And then also, if you haven't subscribed or rated or reviewed, I know we always ask these sort of things. Help me out and do that. And then I'd love just some feedback on the Perks program. This is something new that we're rolling out, and we have no experience with it. So if you have some feedback there, I'd love to hear it. Also, if you want to try the Reaper, you want your chance to win $100 of free Mission Meats products. Pick up some Reaper, record yourself eating that stuff, post it, and tag us, #MissionReaper as well. And who knows, we got $100 of free product coming your way. All right, now get out there and live your mission. Thanks so much.